I'd like to welcome the next guest to the Iowa Girls Wrestling Podcast. Absolutely one of the best coaches I've ever been around. Huge advocate for girls wrestling. Coaches with me at Ridgeview and every other place we coach. Coach Jason Shepard. How are you doing tonight?
I'm doing fantastic, Troy. It's been a good weekend, so
Yeah.
good to see you in this medium.
Yes. The last couple of times we've ran into each other, and I kind of actually changed things around a little bit. I wasn't even going to mention this, but it's been at graduation parties. And I
Yep.
think of some of the just the amazing young women we've had the opportunity to coach the last few years. It's been pretty cool.
Yeah,
Um,
we actually, yeah, in fact, we just so everyone knows, we just saw each other at a graduation party like an hour or two ago, and yeah, it's fun. It's fun to get to reminisce with those young ladies about their choice to start wrestling and how it's affected their lives and everything, and it's always cool to be a part of it. Although I did run into Izzy Deeds at the very last graduation party I was at, and I told her, hey, I gotta run here a little bit. I'm gonna do the podcast with Troy, and I said I actually thought I would always be the absolute last person that Troy would interview, which means that maybe the podcast is over. Maybe like, or maybe this is like now you're gonna rebrand it to something else, like Greeters Happy Hour or something, and then maybe you could
which
sort of like beer sponsor or something.
yes,
So if only
we've seen it's been done before, and
it
it
has
looks like
been
a lot of
quite
fun.
quite
So
well. Yeah.
so I'm all for drinking beer and talking and stuff, but I'm not sure my work and my wife would like that. But it's always worth a shot. Going back, we've had quite a variety of young women who've come through our program. Some that have great success, like Izzy Deeds, and people that have been wrestling for a long period of time. Izzy, your daughter, Dania, just there's so many of them. But that we've had a lot of success with girls that maybe start very late. This last couple of years started as juniors, um,
Or seniors.
or seniors,
Yeah.
and they've had success. And I'm trying to think, that doesn't happen a lot. That 1 year of wrestling does that. What do you think is about the coaching, the environment? What do you think happens for these girls at Ridgeview?
Um, specific to the ones that don't have a lot of time with us, or just in
I
general?
think so. I think that's a good place to start, at least the ones that haven't had a lot of time but have had success.
Sure. Well, I like to think, and it's hard to know, right? It's not like it's a scientific experiment or anything, but I like to think that we try to focus on the things that are the most important. And so, it's not a lot about specific moves, but it's a lot about positioning and pressure and being athletic, and really focusing on those things. I mean, we do teach a lot of moves. We do a lot of technique and a lot of chain wrestling, but it's just the stuff that is going to provide them with um, the skills to be successful, right? I mean, you can teach I mean, if you really wanted a girl to come out and be really successful right away, you'd turn them into like a headlock master, right? Because
Yeah.
then they're going to be able to beat girls maybe they shouldn't. But if they can't hit that headlock, they're just in trouble, right? So, but I think we try to do it right. I think we try to really focus on good position, again, pressure, being aware, having good body awareness, and I think a lot of the drilling and the way that we teach things, just the constant movement, really sort of like also kind of takes the brain work out of it, right? Like I don't think anybody wants wrestlers that sit around and think really hard about what they're going to do next, that they just kind of get in there and pull the trigger. And I think we've developed a lot of strategies and ways of running practice that accomplish that. And so that's one aspect. I think that's kind of the the on the mat aspect. The other thing that I've been really pleased that we've done is creating that community, that family, so that when they show up and we've encouraged them to come out and said, hey, this is going to be an athletic experience unlike you've had before, where it's going to feel like a family. Everyone's going to support each other. Everyone's going to work together to kind of lift each other up. And then early on, they find out that that's true. I think that's pretty powerful as well. Because then a lot of the competitive pressure is still there, but it's not the same, right? Like they're less concerned about letting people down or disappointing people. It's like it's still there. You can't get rid of that. But I do think that they feel a little more supported. There's a lot more positivity, right? Um, you know, we try not to tear people down too much. You know, we try to continually build them up and also show that we're uniquely interested in each one of them. I mean, we have kind of styles that we teach, but there isn't really a specific Ridgeview style. We've had throwers, we've had people with great low singles, we have underhook people, we have firemen's people. So, I mean, we kind of take an individual and we try to help them develop the style that who they want to be as a wrestler. So that's a lot of stuff. It's kind of a lengthy answer to your question, but I think that's why we've been successful with people that come out later. Because I think we've figured out a way to kind of get them up to speed quickly in a way that gives them some confidence and then they feel like they're part of something.
Yeah, I think teaching at a teaching at a different level. I mean, we don't spend a lot of time with that oh, here's your double and that's all you're gonna do and
Yeah.
or this and that. We spend a lot of time on and you've brought a lot of that to it is the chain and chaining two things together because we have different styles of
Hmm.
wrestling, but we've been able to blend those styles quite well. But it's been fun working within our different styles. And I do want everybody to know that every year I plead that maybe you would just quit all of your jobs, not work at all, and just become a full-time wrestling coach. And that would make my life so much easier. But I mean I understand, but then instead of doing this along with your job, you then help coach at BV, you help coach the boys and you help coach the girls. What's uniquely that's pretty unique. You're in during a wrestling season and to help with the clubs, both, so I know finding time is not easy to do that, but what's unique about each one of those little areas? What's unique about being at BV? Yeah.
Yeah. They are unique. They definitely are. Let's see. So let's go ahead and start with well, okay, so since it's a little odd for this podcast, I'll start with the boys team. I continued to work with the Ridgeview boys team this year for several reasons. One, they had a number of seniors that were kids that I had coached in youth, and I knew those kids well, and I really wanted to see them through. And early on in their season, or actually just before their season, they were in the process of hiring assistants, and they hadn't hired me yet. And so I ran their open mats in the summer because I wanted to make sure that they were as set up for success as they could be in their senior year. So, and also I enjoy boys wrestling. I mean, it's a little different. There's certain ways that you can coach boys that are different than how you coach female athletes, and that's fun, you know. And so it's also nice too because you can try out different techniques, strategies, chain wrestling. There were a lot of times I would go to the boys, try something, and then I'd bring it to the girls' room, say, I tried this, it worked. I want to see if it works for the girls. So sometimes it was fun to just kind of have like kind of like a technique experiment lab in that way. So that was good. And then obviously, I've been coaching Ridgeview girls with you since you came to Ridgeview. And that's wonderful. I mean, I really like what we've built. I really care a lot about a lot of our female athletes. I mean, they're just sponges. Like the number of times that I come in the room and they're excited to see me because there's something specific that they want me to work with them on. I mean, that's just an awesome feeling and it's fun, you know how much I love strategy and technique. And so when I have somebody that wants to be a sponge, that's the best. For those of you who are watching this podcast and you don't have never met me before, don't know me, I'm a college professor and I love to teach. And so a lot of what I like the most about wrestling is teaching. And the Ridgeview Girls Room is a great place to teach. And the wrestlers are great students. So I mean that's awesome. They're great. And then doing BV women this year was really cool because that's the age category that I like the most. I chose to be a college professor, and so I really like college students. And so having the opportunity to coach college athletes was really cool. You take a lot of the sponges that we have in the Ridgeview girls' room, and the high school girls, or excuse me, the college women are even more so that way. It was also kind of, and also there's a lot of like sort of more high level technique that I really like to show athletes, and a lot of times at the high school level, it's hard to find people that can absorb all that. Um, but at the college level, they're kind of that's where their brain is. So they're capable, maybe a little more capable of doing that because they're further along. So that was a lot of fun. And it was also kind of fun to revisit freestyle because it had been a long time since I had personally wrestled freestyle. I watched freestyle, but had never had the chance to coach it until this year. And so that was a lot of fun too, especially when we would sort of workshop different things in parterre where Coach Storm is really good at coaching parterre, and so I would get to ask her questions, because I she knows more than I do, and so what can you do this, or could you? Because I'm thinking about how to like fake a gut to transition into something else, or if the gut doesn't work, how do you then switch off? And you don't have a lot of time in freestyle to score in parterre.
Yep.
So that was fun to talk through those sorts of things. And then you alluded to the club. So BVWC, we've run, at different times throughout the years. The most recent iteration of it was right after the high school season and college season ended to Twin Rivers. So it's kind of like a preparation, weekly preparation for Twin Rivers. And that was a lot of fun. One of our big themes in BVWC prior to Twin Rivers was all about like not only sort of like feeling pressure and pulling the trigger, but we kept talking about staying one step ahead of your opponent. So how do you, when you're trying to tie up with your opponent or move your opponent or whatever, that when you do something, you're trying to force a reaction, right? So you're trying to get them to react a certain way so that depending on how they react, you know exactly what you're going to hit. They don't know what's coming next and how you disguise that, because a lot of times if you pressure, you pull your opponent, they might know that a single leg's coming. They can just feel it. So how do you disguise that? How do you get them to move a certain way? So if they react this way, you hit this move. If they react this way, you hit this move. So it was really fun, and it's something that I'm looking forward to then integrating into the regular season this next year.
Yeah, with the BV club, big hire this year.
Yeah.
And do you see that club maybe expanding out to being a little different than less of just a supplemental club and more of a all uh, full-time club?
That's entirely possible. Having so you're alluding to the hire of Abby McIntyre as
Yes.
assistant wrestling coach at BV. That's a huge hire. I mean, you can't understate that, or you can't overstate it. I don't know, whichever one of those. You can't do
Yeah.
that. Um, but yeah, she's an incredible. She has incredible knowledge and incredible success, and she's really, really good at explaining things to athletes. So I could very much see that club expanding and becoming, a regular training center type of environment. I think that one of the things, so, Abby just started there, and I think she and Coach Storm are starting to lay out plans for what that's going to look like in the future. But that's one to watch. I mean, I think if there are any girls in Western Iowa or Eastern Nebraska, or parents that are watching this right now, do keep an eye out on the BVWC Facebook page and everybody's Facebook pages to see what transpires there, because that could be huge.
Yeah. I mean, we, sit out here in Western Iowa and multi-sport athletes and all this compared to if we compare to Eastern Iowa, number of clubs, we just don't have them. We have school-based clubs that really don't cater to the high school aged people to more advanced wrestling. Those girls that are thinking about going to college. So I'm excited for that. I'm excited for Abby
Yeah.
to be in the area. That's really cool. I want to start going maybe backwards just a little bit for a little while, and then we'll come back forward.
Yep.
I don't know how long it's been exactly, but in one day I got a message from both you and your wife one day asking if somehow Tatum could join my club of one. Of course, she didn't know it was a club of one at the time, but I thought we maybe go
I feel
back
like you had
to
pictures of two girls on your Facebook page.
it might
There
have
might have
been
been
two.
two.
It might have been two. But I want to kind of go back to those early days of kind of the fun of we had building. Maybe Northwest, not saying all of Northwest Iowa, but our little section of Northwest Iowa,
Yeah.
through preparing for maybe Mata Dreams and things like that.
Yeah, you bet. Sure. Yeah, that's well, what Troy said is true. We were actively looking for opportunities for our daughter, for Tatum, uh, to get to wrestle with other girls. I can't remember if at that point she had if we had driven her down to Powerhouse in Council Bluffs, because at the time, then Jessica Philippus, now Jessica Jukanovic, was coaching that club, and it was a really neat opportunity. I mean, maybe it sounds weird now, but back then there were no girls' clubs. It just didn't
Yeah.
exist, and so it was very much new. So when we found out that there was a girls' wrestling club in Rockwell City, right? Um, that we were surprised and excited, and so yeah, we reached out to you, and I think you admitted yes, we're a club of one. And then so I kind of logged that, and I think I somehow I knew that you were also helping coach junior high with South Central Calhoun, and so I kind of cataloged that because I was also one of my coaching gigs at that time. We've already identified that for some reason I can't ever just coach just one team. Um, because I think I was doing the Wild Raptors Youth Club and then also helping with middle school because my oldest son was in middle school at that time. So I was helping with Ridgeview Middle School. And so I kind of cataloged that there's a good chance I was going to get to see you at the Aurelia Middle School meet at the end of the season. And so I remembered what you look like. I'm like, I'm gonna go over and meet this guy, and we did. And our lives have been different ever since. But so yeah, I mean, gosh, um, we, we, I think the first time that you actually met Tatum was probably at the Woodbine camp.
Yes, yes. Woodbine Camp with Brittany Shoemate was having that fun. Not no, she had to do so many community service hours for her graduation, and
Yep,
so she did a clinic at Woodbine, which
yep,
Matt Mentick was the coach there who wrestled with me at Dana College.
yep. Yep.
So
And so I brought down Tatum and Jolyn Tiefenthaler, and we did the camp. And I don't know if we had live wrestling or if the way that they practice technique just looked like live wrestling. But I just remember you and Matt looking over like, who are these girls? And do they hate each other? Are they trying to kill each other? Which is honestly how it generally looked whenever those two wrestled, even if it was just learning moves. But yeah, that was definitely the start. Those two events were kind of the start of it all, and then we had a lot of we just tried to create a lot of opportunities for girls in Western Iowa and more specifically Northwest Iowa. But we seemed to pull a lot of folks from all over the place, from Central Iowa
yeah.
and Council Bluffs and Logan and whatnot. And then a lot of that culminated in, like you said, forming teams, specific teams for Western Iowa. We had the Iowa Girls Wrestling, Iowa West, sorry, Iowa West girls wrestling team that competed at Midwest Meta Dreams. And between you, me, and Jess, we had a high school team and a youth team. Crazy to go back now and look at how many state champs,
Oh, I
future
know.
state champs we had.
How many
We had
college wrestlers are in that group? Is in college
Abby
All-Americans?
McIntyre was one of
Yeah.
them. One of the older girls, Tegan Carrot, one of the younger ones at the time, now a state champ, high school state champ. So I mean, we had an impressive group who at the time was just learning and kind of some of them were more experienced, but at that first Midwest Mad Dreams, and I think it was an Independence
Yeah.
in the big gym. We just got destroyed. I mean, it was,
Yeah. That
but
wasn't pretty.
everyone stayed out, and the rest is history. So I still have those singlets are legendary. The Iowa West girl singlets because they had the flames on them,
Yeah.
and I think I think my daughter wore that to weigh in all through high school. I mean, it's a treasured singlet. And I seem to remember all three of us coaches had bowling shirts with flames
Yeah,
too. That
yeah,
were
they were
pretty.
nice. I still have my bowling shirt upstairs somewhere.
I do too. I keep searching for venues where it would be like, somewhat normal for me to wear that, and
Oh,
there aren't many.
Wall Lake has a 4-lane bowling alley. We could go to Wall Lake's bowling alley sometime.
Deal, deal. I'm free this summer, so you let me know when you want to go. Um, but yeah, so gosh, what else? And then early on, we're very involved in Twin Rivers. I remember I think I was one of the coaches at one of the first Twin Rivers, and
Yeah.
that was an experience. That could be another podcast, honestly.
I think you might have coached a year prior to me doing Twin Rivers.
I think you're right. Yeah, that was back when we had, I think, one high school team and three youth teams or something like that. Um, but yeah, and that team was incredible too. That we had a whole bunch of state champs and future college wrestlers. So, but yeah, I mean, and that was, and it was cool too, to be a part of that because at the same time, we were both trying to cultivate girls wrestling in the where we were coaching. So, you were
Yeah.
South Calhoun. I was at Ridgeview and also running the Wild Raptors Wrestling Club. And we at the time, my wrestling club, I think a quarter of the athletes were female, which was pretty unusual at that time. I think we were one of the first like local clubs that I knew of that actually had girls cut wrestling singlets available to the members of the club. So, I mean, that
And a
was
girls
pretty
division
cool.
at your tournament. You offered girls divisions.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
we were one of the early adopters of having a girls division back when you would try to do a girls division and you would also let the girls compete with the boys too, so they would get twice as many matches. I mean, it was a neat time because there were a small number of people trying to make a big difference and trying to grow something. So
Yeah.
good good
And
memories.
we also had teams through COVID years. The
Yep.
Angry Alpacas were one of the years.
So for those of you who haven't seen my shirt, I'm of course wearing the Iowa Girls Wrestling Podcast shirt, but my close second that I was going to wear to this was actually the Angry Alpaca shirt, and maybe I should have brought it. So, but yeah, that was a Dave Storm creation, wasn't it?
That was a Dave and Brock Storm. And then
Yeah.
I think my favorite quote to come out of that, I believe your wife said, "Well, that's a llama, not an
Mama.
alpaca."
Yeah.
And Dave said, "No, that's the old days when alpacas were real men or something like that, or tough like real men or something."
The great thing is, I think they stole that llama from the movie Llamageddon.
It
Um,
is, yeah.
Which, if anybody watching this podcast hasn't seen Llamageddon, you need to.
It's
Probably one of the 10
it's
greatest films ever produced.
I'm for sure it's one of the top 10.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I think
it's
James Cameron would have made it, but he was too busy making Titanic.
silly him. He gave up on the attack of the alpaca. Well, that yeah, killer alpacas, was
Missed
that it?
opportunity. Yep.
Yes. All right. You're a Dallas Center Grimes guy, grew
Yep.
up there. Um, you had amazing coaching and you had some pretty high level people in your room.
Yeah.
What was it like to be at Dallas Center Grimes?
Yeah. So I'm originally from Dallas Center. I went to Dallas Center Grimes when it was a 1A school. It's, obviously a lot bigger now. But it was a great place. I have really benefited from having great coaches throughout my career. My high school coach was Andy Davidson, who was a Hall of Fame coach. I mean, won state title. I remember I went back so he had been there since the early 80s. And I remember I went back when I was in college or maybe after college. It was like late 90s, early 2000s. And there was talk that maybe Dallas Center Grimes wasn't going to have a state qualifier, which would be the only time that ever happened in Andy Davison's career. And it didn't, of course, it didn't happen. They had somebody qualify, and he went on and I think placed at state. But Andy Davidson was an incredible coach. I mean, he was a great motivator. He did a really good job of identifying what people needed. Kind of, a little bit like what we try to do in our room. Not cookie cutter. I mean, like we would have guys that on top would run bars and cradles and whatnot, but we'd also have guys that would run, ball and chain, tilts, legs. So we had kind of a wide variety. I mean, there wasn't one really specific style. Andy was a fireman's guy,
Nice.
he was a really, really good wrestler for William Penn back in the day. He was an All-American. And just a beast of a man. I still remember when I was in second grade, that's when Dallas Center Grimes won a state title, it was 1984. And he came in I think that year, the year after, having won a state title, and he had kind of like like a Hulk Hogan mustache. And at that time in my life, I didn't differentiate between WWF and Scholastic Wrestling. And so I'm like, oh, I'm signing up for this guy's club because he's going to turn me into Hulk Hogan. Um, but yeah, I mean, he just had a big personality, and so like we had good teams. We would uh, almost always make at least regional duels. Almost always won our sectional. Just really solid wrestlers. We were fortunate that in seventh and eighth grade, I had awesome coaches. Lonnie Ferguson, who is now at Nevada, I believe, or no, West Marshall, Nevada. Um, is he was my one of my middle school coaches, and he was fantastic. And then we had a number of other coaches: Scott Kopecky, Tom Owens, Tim Danley, that all were different kinds of assistant coaches, but were all really good at different aspects of what they taught. So, and all different personalities. I could probably give a podcast about each one of those gentlemen too. A lot of funny stories and good memories there. But there was an expectation that you were gonna strive for excellence. And I remember I wrestled varsity all 4 years, and I remember putting on the Dawson Grimes singlet in those initial dual meets when I won the varsity spot. I was 125. I probably should have been like a 119 pounder, but our 119 pounder was a multi-time returning state qualifier who then placed fourth that year. And so at that point, I wasn't going to beat him. So I wrestled, up at 25, which was probably too big for me as a freshman. And I think everybody that year in my weight class was a senior. And so I took my lumps. But I had a really good career and was by the time I was done with my second trip to state, my senior year, I was ready for more. And so I kind of looked ahead to college, where I had another fantastic coach. We'll leave that for later in the podcast, but Dallas Center Grimes was great to me, and not only in wrestling, but just in terms of school. I mean, I had excellent teachers, I had an excellent principal, excellent coaches, just a lot of really great support. Remember all those people fondly, and everything that they poured into me. So.
Yeah, it's kind of hard to imagine Dallas Center Grimes being a 1A school now when you drive through the area. It's
Here's the
just
kicker. So the kicker was we would flip-flop between 1A and 2A. My junior year we were 1A, my senior year we were 2A. We would flip-flop with another school. As far as which one would go
yeah,
above or below the line. Would you like to guess which school that is?
man, I'm not is it Waukee?
It's Waukee, which is now
Yeah.
two schools. Yeah, so it was a different time. There was a lot more cornfields around Des Moines back then.
Yeah, it's amazing the resources when you get into those areas now compared to, and we talk about this and the reason there are classes, sometimes people don't realize that, especially like you even said you didn't understand Western Iowa until you lived in Western Iowa.
Yeah, I have told you
The
that before. Yeah, yeah,
the resource differences and
yeah,
stuff. I was at Southeast Polk a couple weekends ago for USA State, and you pull up and they have a stadium larger than the BV College Stadium,
yeah,
and it's like, man,
yeah.
there's a different feel to the city compared to these little schools out in, half hour apart from each other and
Yeah.
yeah. So
Yeah, yeah, it's so much different. I mean, you yeah, there's so much wealth and riches and opportunity in cities. That you look at that and you're like, well, out here in the middle of nowhere, we get to spend all of our money on busing students. It's just, and it's not that simple, but there is some truth to that. But by the same token, living out here in the country and rural America is awesome too. I mean,
Yeah,
my kids are very different kids as a result of having the experience that they've had in the Ridgeview School District and living in Northwest Iowa than they would have been if they'd grown up in like Omaha or in Des Moines.
yeah,
And people that have met my kids know exactly what I'm talking about.
yeah. Well, they got the opportunity to do everything possible.
Yeah,
That's not a possibility at a Dallas Center Grimes now.
right.
You're probably specializing in 1 to 2 sports, probably one and maybe playing a different sport throughout the year. But
Yeah.
or you're either in sports or you're in choir and some of the other activities that Tatum and Ian and Noah were able to do. So
Yeah. Yeah, my kids' experience were more similarly mirrored mine and my wife's. We both grew up in what were then rural schools. My wife went to Battle Creek, Nebraska. That's where she's from. And anybody who's from Nebraska knows Battle Creek. I mean, they're just
yeah,
absolute dynamite and have been for years. And but Dallas Center Grimes was very much a small rural school back in those days, and so I did all. I was three-sport athlete, was in every conceivable student organization or activity. I mean, it it it's really neat from a development perspective when you have the opportunity to try so many different things.
yeah. And your college coach, also Hall of Famer coach, I believe, Coach
Yes.
Al Baxter. The Before we start on Al, I believe your dad told me one time, and when we were sitting around talking, that Coach Baxter told him, "I'm not so sure that Jason should maybe not wrestle. He's the smartest kid I ever had, and I don't want his brain to get messed up."
I can see Al saying that. By the way, not many people can say Al Baxter without saying the legendary Al Baxter.
I did mess that up. I'm sorry.
That's all right. That's all right. I don't know if he ever went to the courthouse and had that officially changed, but that's usually what you hear, and he earns it. I mean, he's incredible.
Yeah,
Al has that unique ability to remember everyone he's ever met in his entire life in great detail. I mean, he's so personable and. There are probably people in this world that don't like Al, but I've never met them, and it's until I do, it's hard to believe that they exist. Al's a fantastic motivator. That's really one of the things that I think everybody appreciates about Al is he just has this incredible energy and incredible vision. He knows what he wants. And he knows how to get people excited about being a part of that. When Coach Storm first started, Paige Storm started at BV, I said, have you ever met Al?" She said, "No." I said, you need to meet Al Baxter. You need to talk to him because in a lot of ways there are elements of Paige Storm that remind me a lot of Al Baxter in terms of how she operates and and the type of competitor. I mean, Al is the ultimate competitor. He would prefer to never lose ever to anyone under any circumstances, and is just super passionate about that. And Paige is very much the same way, and also very personable, kind of like Al was and whatnot. So. Over time, I helped facilitate a phone conversation between Paige and Al, and I called Paige. No, actually, I texted Paige shortly after the conversation happened. I said, "How did it go?" And she texted back in all caps, "I am ready to run through a brick wall." I said, "Well, that's normally how you feel after talking to Al Baxter." So, but yeah, I mean, we had when I was at BV. Well, actually, let me back up a little bit. So, when I was in high school, I was looking at colleges and um, sort of decided I wanted to major in computer science because that's something I was really interested in. And I figured I would probably wrestle. And I think after my senior year of high school wrestling, I decided, yeah, absolutely, I'm going to wrestle in college. And so I looked at a bunch of places, visited a whole bunch like Wartburg Central. And then I ended up checking. At one point, I even thought maybe I'd try to walk on at Iowa State. And Iowa State and BV ended up being my top two choices. But I remember when I took the my first college visit up to BV, it was during the summer, which Storm Lake is gorgeous during the summer. It is an absolutely beautiful city during the warm months, and as beautiful as it can be in winter in Western Iowa. It's kind of a pretty Christmas town too. But I remember we drove in. This was before the resort was there, Kings Point, and so when you drive into the east side of town, there's the expanse of the lake, and it's just gorgeous. And we drove into town, and I thought, oh wow, this is amazing. Like I want to live here, whether I go to college here or not. But I met with Joe Traylor, who was a professor of computer science, which ended up being one of my favorite mentors. And then I, of course, met with Al, and I was just mesmerized. I mean, he inspires confidence. He's a magnetic human, and I thought I absolutely want to wrestle for Al Baxter. And I believe BV had actually wrestled at the national duels that the year before, back when like different D3 teams would get
Yep.
invited. So that was kind of exciting too, because I'd followed that. So, oh wow, BV's wrestling at the national duels. Um, but the room that Al assembled was really pretty incredible. I mean, we had a massive team. It was like 40 or 50 guys in a very small wrestling room back then. I mean, it was kind of normal by the standards of the day. I mean, back then it was pretty normal to have padded pillars in the middle of the room
Oh yeah.
because there, right? Like everyone
Yeah.
had that. But we had a ton of guys and man, we just a lot of great guys, a lot of guys that I learned a lot from. We would share technique all the time, and try to help each other get better. One of the things I love about being involved in wrestling today is that I get to see a lot of my college teammates. You know, when we go to state, when we go to this tournament or that tournament, so many of those guys that I wrestled with in college. Um, our coaches themselves, our officials, sports journalists. You know, I get to see KJ Pilcher, once or twice a year just because of that. When he's at state, writing for the Gazette. So, it was a great experience being at BV and being in that room, being part of a really good team, and having building those lifelong relationships with all those guys. That it was a great place to learn more about wrestling and improve as a wrestler and make some awesome friendships along the way.
Yeah. And your career has led you back to BV,
Hmm. Yeah,
so
yeah, full circle.
and you met your wife there.
Yep, yep, yep,
So one of the things I really enjoy hearing stories about, because all of us had stories when we had young kids, but the whole twin experience as a young couple
yeah.
with Tatum and
Noah.
Noah. I
Yep.
you know I like hearing those stories. So you probably better let us know how you survived the early twin years.
I have no idea. I blacked out for like 2 years. No, it was an experience. So our oldest is Ian, and he's a little under 2 years older than my twins Noah and Tatum. And so, when he was born, or excuse me, when the twins were born, we had three kids, all under the age of two, all in diapers. And it was wild. I mean, we had been living in Omaha. We had just moved to Orange City. That's where my wife had her first medical practice. And we moved to Orange City, and it was something else. I mean, uh, having twins screaming in stereo at night, when you're trying to get them fed and get their diaper changed and there's something still not right. They were born premature. They were in the NICU for like 3 weeks maybe. And then we brought them home. They were on heart monitors and they also had been giving them caffeine so that they wouldn't was it bradycardia? And so yeah, so they had these heart monitors, and if the leads weren't on right, that would scream. And so that was kind of rough. And Yeah, it was just it was exhausting. But I still remember I was trying to still work remotely, for the consulting firm, the IT consulting firm I was working with, and Lisa was starting her practice. And so I would do a lot of my work at weird times of the night. Sometimes I would actually hold both twins in one arm. So I would stack like Noah here and then Tatum on top, and then I would take the two bottles and feed them like this, and then I would kind of like try to tuck them under my chin and then type with one hand. It was pretty wild. Another thing that happened was I remember it was like during bowl season, college football bowl season, and a lot of the like ESPN3 or whatever the kind of the off ESPN channels would have like kind of the mid-major bowls. And I remember I we were not sleeping so much and up so much that I would watch the same football games over and over and over again on replay. And there was I think it was Coastal Carolina and Gardner Webb. I watched that football game probably 7 times, and I knew exactly what was going to happen. Like every play, I'm like, oh, it's 3rd and 8, and there's 3:48 left in the third quarter. They're going to throw a screen pass to the right side, and the linebacker is going to come up and make a great play. I mean, like it was at that point, I realized, oh my God, what has my life become? But we made it through. It was pretty
Yeah.
wild. And it was, you know, people ask, did my kids have twin language? Did they have like a sixth sense? Did they have a special relationship? I don't know if they ever had a twin language, but they definitely have a special relationship. They care a lot about each other, and I think they're looking forward to both being home from college to get to hang out again because they couldn't be more different,
Yeah.
but they really do love each other. So Noah's left-handed, Tatum's right-handed. They're into completely different things. Tatum's academic interests lie in sports administration. Noah's interested in mechanical engineering. Noah restored a antique 1937 Alice Chalmers tractor. Tatum has done a lot of other things having to do with sports. She actually has her own like sports coaching business during the summer. She has a alpaca fiber business. I mean, they're
Yeah.
really unique kids, but in completely different ways. So.
Yeah. I keep waiting for you to just tell Noah he can't be in school and he's got to come home and run the Eden Valley alpacas and keep the farm upkeep.
Well, that's an option, but I always remember something my father said to me, and I thought it was brilliant. Actually, I thought it was pretty clever at the time, and now I really see the brilliance of it. He always told me that he wanted me to go out and do really well in the world so that I could come back and support him when he got older. And I thought that's really smart. So I actually told my kids the same thing. Although I don't know that we need that. I think I couched it as you guys need to take us on some extravagant trip every year after you get out of college, and fingers crossed. So,
Yeah. I should have met you earlier because I'm probably going to end up taking care of my kids through my old age. But, but it is
just
what it is.
we'll just tell them they should move up here, and then they can run Eden Valley alpacas. That'd
There
be
you
great.
go.
We
Well,
have extra bedrooms, or we
that's
will
I
have
don't know if
extra.
you I don't know if you want that or not. Uh,
Your grandkids are adorable.
you know, um, we don't get to see each other as often, not during wrestling season, but we definitely keep up probably nightly, 2 to 3 videos a night,
Yep.
get passed back and forth mostly throughout the year. Um, and then, of course, we enjoy never getting too crazy out of hand, but having a whiskey or two here and there, and
Yep.
and stuff. So, I need to let everybody know for sure that you're definitely the brains of the operation, and you're the person that you're probably the one that keeps me from getting fired or being released as much as my brother did last year. But because I temper things by, okay, I'm going to send this, and I like send it to Jason first, and you tell me no.
I disagree with the brains of the operation statement, but I don't disagree that yeah, I have tempered your spirit at times. So that's
Yes.
a fair statement.
But we have got to do a lot of cool things. We were around for unsanctioned, and how
Yeah.
did the whole, I mean, I'm a lot of people, I've put that on the podcast, or it's been released with the podcast.
Yeah.
Tatum, Izzy have talked about it, but you're kind of the one that kind of got it going. I mean, in a roundabout way.
Yeah.
So how
No, I
how
have
did unsanctioned happen?
well, no, it's yeah, I don't even know if it's roundabout is it's not even roundabout. So like I have a lot of ideas. And especially when it comes to like my own academic program at BV. I mean, I'm fortunate. I'm fortunate that a lot of the things that I get to do in my life, I have great companions, cohorts, colleagues to do it with. Obviously, you with wrestling. But in my job, I have great colleagues in computer science, and we have crazy ideas, and a lot of times we do them, and they turn out fantastic. Um, so when I first met Clayton Van Horn, he was my student. I can say that legally because he's told people that. Um, and but he had done some work for the BV men's wrestling team, and it was pretty good. For where he was at school at the time, I think he was only a freshman or something like that. And uh, and so you and I, this was when you were still both the boys and girls coach at Ridgeview, had talked about maybe doing like a hype video kind of thing just to raise awareness of the teams, right? And so we then commissioned him to do a girls hype video followed by a boys hype video. And at that point, he was starting to kind of like come into his own creatively, and the work that he produced was really good. Like I've gone back and watched it. It's like, wow, he was doing really well for being like I think a sophomore or junior in college at that point. And so, um, I kind of kept him on the hook and always thought, it'd be cool if he could do something bigger than this. And we had talked a little bit about, maybe making a bigger project for a class or possibly even his capstone. And I think then he really kind of like latched onto the idea of this could be my capstone project. I could come over and do like a documentary about girls wrestling, its growth and it's pushed to become sanctioned and to be legitimized in that way. So I tried to encourage him as much as I could. I just said, hey, I'm pretty sure that Troy will be on board to give you full access and be able to come over and video and interview, and we'll support you in any way we can. And that absolutely happened. He became like a part of the team. He was there a lot. It became super normal to have Clayton there with a camera in your face. I don't think anybody really had a problem with it. Like it just became so normal that it was almost like it was like a letdown when he wasn't there.
Yeah.
Um, and we stayed after practice, for big chunks of time afterwards to talk to him and reflect. And I think it was really nice. The whole experience was really nice for us and for our team because it did give our athletes the opportunity to reflect. It gave us the opportunity to reflect and share. Um, it was a cool way to then, showcase girls wrestling to others. I mean, there've been a lot of girls that are wrestling right now that saw that, and if, they or their parents have come up to me and said, my daughter started wrestling because of, you and Troy and Tatum and Izzy and Jolynn and Shania, just what they had to say resonated with people. And it's a great story. It really is. And my goodness, like you can tell everybody that all the girls that got interviewed because they're really good at being interviewed now. I mean, it was almost kind of like we always joke that Ridgeview should have just like given them speech class credit for that
Oh yeah.
experience because when you have a camera in your face all the time, you get used to it. So, and they did. They all kind of
Yeah.
became.
No, it's crazy this to think. Well, and I know Clayton commented, the first few practices, people would kind of you know, dodge
Uh,
the camera. And after a while, it was like the camera wasn't there. But you're right. I mean, I think just the girls got the opportunity to talk in front of a camera that much. You don't worry about it anymore. I would have, give him credit probably partially for this podcast, because I have zero problem talking in front of a camera and making a fool of myself, so it's all right.
Yeah.
It's because we've just done it. It was kind of like being in the wrestling office,
Yeah.
and that would make me Steve Carell, I guess.
It, it had that feel at times, didn't it?
Yeah,
Well, and I can't say enough about Clayton. I mean, he was the consummate professional. I mean, he wasn't just some goofy college kid that was trying to make a documentary. I mean, he really approached it with incredible tenacity. I mean, he would work on his normal stuff, and then he would allocate time uh to index the video and annotate it and take notes and cut it and he would like share what he was doing, like, hey, I think I'm going to do this with this particular snippet, or I've got this but I think I'm going to use it here, but then this happened. It just he was so incredibly professional and skilled. And I don't know if you've watched what he's done recently in his
yeah,
actual post-graduation job, but he's really good
yeah, he is.
at telling stories and capturing things and having an eye for action and he's just a great storyteller.
Yeah, one of the things he got to capture, and probably a really significant moment in both of our lives, when as things that we worked really hard for was sanctioning at the
Hmm.
IWCOA tournament. Probably one of the coolest moments. When you look back on the career, for sure that night will be remembered. But when we look and compare where we were at with what we have now,
Hmm.
um, what's your thoughts on the girls' union and how they've done?
Yeah, very positive, honestly. Like I don't think I can say enough good things about the girls' union. I in the early days of trying to be sanctioned, I don't know that I really appreciated the girls' union, and the fact that we have two athletic associations slash unions in the state of Iowa. Before that experience, I probably would have said that seems really wasteful. Like, why do we have two? But in the process of sanctioning, I really think I came to understand not just the process of sanctioning, but also through my daughter and her interactions with the girls' union. I've come to understand why that is important. I mean, they really care about having a unique experience for female athletes. More so than it's just a different vibe than what the boys association tries to do. The girls union wants to have something that is uniquely for female athletes so that they feel like they're special. I think of the early days where we had talked about that legitimizing girls wrestling might be that the boys state tournament, maybe two mats or four mats were for girls and the rest were for boys. And there might have been a time where I would have thought, yeah, that'd be good. But the girls union would have in thinking how the girls union thinks, they would have thought, no, that's ridiculous. Like, why would you do that? You're basically saying girls wrestling isn't as important because we're going to shove them to the edge of the mat. And so a lot of what the girls union has done has been to create a good tournament that is exciting, that is full of energy. I get that we're really bulging at the seams at the Extreme Arena, but you know what it reminds me of? It reminds me of the old days at Vets.
Yeah.
Because Vets was a little smaller, it was loud. The Extreme Arena gets loud when exciting things happen, and uh, and the Extreme Arena is not a big cavernous building where sound escapes. I mean, it's exciting. So I applaud the girls' union for everything they've done. It's really cool. I like the fact that there aren't 64 girl brackets anymore. That was brutal. That was absolutely
Yeah.
brutal. You know, I remember Tatum's freshman year at the IWCOA tournament. I think she was like 4-2 or 5-2 and didn't place. It's
Yeah.
just
Yeah.
wild. Um, but it was such a gauntlet, and they had to wrestle so many matches. So, I really appreciate what the tournament is now. Is there opportunity for improvement? Yes. Is the girls' union looking at ways to improve? Yes. Are they trying to do it incrementally? Yeah. And I think that's smart. Like if we would have tried to go to two classes and have a dual state tournament and all this different stuff all at once, it would have been really, really hard to manage. I think anybody who hasn't had to manage large changes at scale with a lot of people before doesn't understand just how important change management is. And I think they approach that pretty well. Again, this isn't like a wholesale endorsement. I'm not saying that they're doing everything exactly how I think they should. But for the most part, um, I really appreciate how they view their role in producing a quality athletic experience for female athletes. And I think I also alluded to the fact that it's not just through the girls wrestling experience, but also my daughter Tatum was on the Iowa Girls High School Athletic Union advisory committee, the student advisory board, and or student advisory committee was what student athlete advisory committee. I'm gonna get it right eventually. Um, yeah, Student Athlete Advisory Committee. And that was an amazing experience for her because they got a lot of cool leadership training, a lot of cool experiences. They got to go and help with different state level events, different state championships, and kind of see how that all gets put together and be a part of that. Um, so, I mean, they have a mission and they live it out. And that's something I really appreciate about what they do.
Yeah, no, I've enjoyed being part of this whole last few years of everything, and yet and sometimes it is frustrating because we want everything right now, and even yours will be the week after Erin's. She's actually will be on the this week, and
Mhm.
one of the things is we do hear you,
Why did you
but
do
we
that? Why do I follow Aaron? Why
because
did you make me follow Aaron?
it's just to keep building up. I keep every
Oh,
year, every week is just a
I'm a total letdown. Oh my
no,
God.
it's every week is just a little bit more, a little better up the ladder. And I actually
Give
sent a
her
message, and I don't know if this will happen. I sent a message to Frank Jasper today to see if he
that.
would consider doing the podcast because he's been instrumental
Uh-huh.
in Ridgeview girls wrestling for a couple years now. So
Yeah.
yeah, for those that don't know, Frank Jasper is the actor who played Shoot in the movie Vision Quest, and we've actually had him do a personalized video for our girls. So
We
I'm
did.
hoping that
That
maybe
was
he would do that.
an epic event.
Yes. Yeah, we've had a lot of success with the Ridgeview team, a lot of fun. Um, what do you think the future brings for, and I'm going to talk for you, for wrestling. Where do you think your future is? You know, how much longer are you gonna be able to hold out and coach three teams, or what's your plan for the future?
Well, I I will say this. I'm not coaching three teams next year. It's just that wasn't sustainable. And part of the reason I say that is having done it, um, you're like a part of a coach for each team, and I don't think that's fair. I don't think that's wise. Like it was really hard this last year. As cool as it was for me personally to get to to interact with each team, I missed a lot of competitions. I missed a lot of practices. A lot of times I would come in to a room and have no idea what had gone on in the last week. Didn't know what each athlete needed. I wasn't keeping up with video. So if I did miss a competition, in the early days when you and I were coaching both Ridgeview boys and girls wrestling, I mean, I was watching video all the time. You and I were talking every night after practice for hours, and which was exhausting. Uh, but uh, um, but
Talking
I
with me for hours was exhausting.
no. Adopting your sleep schedule was exhausting.
Oh,
That
okay.
wasn't work during the day. But no, actually, that was a wonderful time of coaching. I mean, it was your first head coach job, and we were trying to figure out how to maximize the experience for both a boys team and a girls team while coaching them simultaneously, and figuring out track wrestling and planning practice, and yeah, it was wild. I'll always remember that fondly. But that was easy because we competed and practiced at the same time with three teams that don't practice together and don't compete together. It's just really hard. So I really I felt very ineffective in all three of my roles this year. Like I can point to different things and be like, well, I helped achieve this or I helped this athlete get better at this, and I can do that. But I can't say with confidence that I was really effective overall with any one team. So I think the three team thing is done. I think two teams is more realistic. And I'm just going to be vague from that point forward because I really haven't committed to anything yet. But there's my goodness, there's some athletes I'm really excited to work with this next year. I'm definitely not done coaching, I'll tell you that much. But it's going to be like it's not three teams this year.
Gotcha.
Upcoming year.
And then in your profession of computer science,
Mhm.
is AI going to take over the world?
There's a lot of so how do you here's what I would say. AI is changing things for sure. There are people are going to lose their jobs to AI. It's already happened. Um, but is it going to become is AI going to rule us? Is it going to be like the Matrix where, AI will surpass humanity and we're screwed? Here's one thing that I want to clarify. I mean, if you really want me to talk about AI, I can. We'll circle back to wrestling eventually, but
I think AI is a great subject. I love the subject, actually, to tell you the
yeah.
truth.
Well, I mean, one thing that people need to realize about AI is, it's a statistical model. It's like a giant multiple equation system that's being trained. It's being trained on stuff that was made by people, right? So part of the reason that AI has become big is we have big, 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 big data centers that can store all of this stuff, and then we have the computing power to crunch it all. So it's basically being trained to AI is like fancy autocomplete, really. I mean, it's what it
Hmm.
what it boils down to. So it's trying to probabilistically decide how it should respond to questions you ask it. It's basing that on up until recently, human data, right? So like everything that humanity has ever produced and happens to be available on the web, it's being used to train these models, right? So that's why you can coerce a generative AI program into being racist because people are racist, right? Or if you try to get it to act like it's sentient and has a soul, it can do that because it's read science fiction texts where that happens. Um, so I'm getting to a point here, and that is, so what else is on the internet now since we've had generative AI besides human created content? Computer
Well,
created content.
AI, yeah,
Yeah,
AI
bot
created
junk,
content.
right? Bot junk, right? So, which is a lot of it's garbage. What happens if you put garbage input into a system?
You probably get garbage out. Yeah,
Yeah. So, I mean, there's a popular belief right now that as AI improves, eventually it's going to level off because there's no way to differentiate between there's no reliable way to differentiate between human created content and computer created content because the computer created content is a prediction of what human created content would look like.
I
So,
gotcha.
it's entirely possible it's not going to rule everything in the foreseeable future, but it is disruptive. I've already seen that in our own college graduates, in their pursuit of jobs. It's harder now because a lot of jobs have been outsourced to AI.
Yeah,
So,
and the use of AI in classes. So so as a professor, are you again off of wrestling? Are you using AI, teaching them how to use AI instead of I mean, a lot of students I know that just throw their few ideas and here, give me my 5-page paper,
yeah.
but to use it properly. I'm guessing in computer science, you are teaching them to use it in a proper manner.
That's a really good question, Troy. So in computer science, the reality is if I taught computer science now the way that computer science had been taught the 10, 20, 30 years prior, they could do it all with generative AI. Every assignment I could give them, they would be able to do it. That generative AI is going to come up with a really good solution. And so I don't teach that way. What I do is I teach a lot of conceptual things and like how do we deal with bigger issues like scale? Like it's not just can you build this this web program, but can you build Facebook? Can you build Amazon? And can you do it in this way so that it scales properly and you can add these features to it easily? Because AI will produce a very specific solution, but it may not be easy to change. So they really have to understand conceptually what's going on and really know what they're doing. Otherwise, they get trapped in what I've been calling the AI cave. So like my students that are not motivated and are actually always looking to cut corners and just have AI do all their work. Eventually, I'll give them an assignment they can't do it. And, like they'll type it into generative AI and they'll get a solution, and I'll say no, it's got to do this other thing, and they can't. Like if AI can't solve it for them, they can't think. So they basically outsource their brain to AI. And that's a horrible thing when it happens. I warn my students all the time when they're freshmen, don't do this, don't do it, because then you're in trouble and there's no path back. You're trapped in the cave. And it doesn't happen very often, but like this year we have like 60 majors or something right now. The program's actually really big. When I started at BV, we had 28 and now we have 60. So it's a
Wow.
really popular program. And we have really good students. We're not going to talk about that right now. This is a wrestling podcast. But anyway, to close the loop here, I would say that of the 60 students, I have like three that were trapped in the AI cave this spring. So that's a pretty good percentage, and I hope that they can change how they approach their education. But yeah. Yeah, AI is an interesting topic. I hope people continue to be really interested and concerned about it, because it's important for people to understand what it is and how it can be used, and but how it absolutely should not, like we shouldn't have people should always be in the loop on everything. So there you go.
Good. Very good. So I don't have to worry about being in the Matrix then, at least not yet.
We might be. I don't know. There's no
Or
real
maybe
good.
we're already in the Matrix, I
We
guess.
might. We don't. Might all be brains in a jar somewhere.
That's right. So obviously you've listened and watched my podcast a few times, and the when I get through kind of my main subjects, I like to let people get to know you just a little bit better. And
Hmm.
so I've revamped a few of my questions, and I started with Aaron, but I had to revamp them a little bit for you also just to fit the situations.
Yeah.
So you live out on the farm, but not just a normal farm. You have alpacas. You
Yeah.
have
That's
some
not a normal farm.
you have crazy chickens.
We do.
You have some very unique chickens. You have horses and an extremely anxious dog named Kona.
Yes.
Um,
Yeah. It's crazy.
if you could have any pet in the world, if you could have one or maybe add one more animal to the farm, what are you going to bring into the farm?
I have to add something. I don't think adding anything to this farm is a good idea. Downsizing sounds better. Well, so I'll say it would be nice for Kona to have a friend that's less anxious that would make her less anxious, but I don't know that that would work. We've talked about getting another dog to that effect, but I don't think there's hope. Um, so I don't know. I don't know that I'd add anything. I really like the alpacas are cool. They're just really, really super interesting animals. We have a couple that are friendly, that are just kind of fun to hang out with. But they're odd. They're odd and interesting. Um, I don't know if you want me to get into alpaca lore here, but
Well, they are, is it communal defecators? Is that what they are?
yeah. So
Is that,
that's
did I use the proper term?
you knocked it out of the park, my friend. Um, No, yeah, they are. They will pick one sort of place that is their latrine, and that's where they go. They're not like a lot of other four-legged animals where they'll defecate in the same place that they eat. They're tidy. They're very tidy animals. And the males and the females are different in that the males will do it all at once and the females will take turns. And so they'll all kind of like watch out for each other. Another cool thing that they'll do is at dusk, they'll go out and they do this thing called cushing where they get down, they like sit on their legs. They look like big furry caterpillars when they do it. But they'll arrange themselves like a clock, like the face of a clock, so that they're
Hmm.
all taking a different sector watch for the evening. So that's kind of neat too. People often ask, do they spit? Yes, but usually not at humans. They usually will spit at each other. That's one kind of quirky, funny thing about alpacas that they do that's kind of dumb is if they fight over food, they'll spit at each other, but their spit is a mix of stomach acid and grass, and it smells horrible. But they'll spit at each other, and then the acid will give them sour mouth, and their mouth will just hang down like that, and they can eat. So, if you were a really cruel person and you wanted to play a joke on your alpacas, you could put like one pan of grain in the middle of them, and then they would get mad and spit at each other, and then none of them could actually eat because they'd all be have this in their mouth. Uh, so we've inadvertently had that happen before. But they're cool. They're really cool. You shear them once a year. Their fiber is like massive. I mean, they have these incredible heavy coats. The fiber's cool. It's really, really soft. But they're neat animals.
Yeah.
Another fun thing, we were just talking about this today. So we have the boys and girls separated for reasons that should be fairly obvious. But the with the females, there's always one female that becomes the alpha that's in charge of all the other alpacas. And so, like, if there's ever a predator nearby, she'll make like a whelping noise that alerts all of them, and they just kind of like all flip around. But they also, so alpacas, male alpacas get what are called fighting teeth. They're like really sharp canines, and if you get a bunch of male alpacas together in the presence of a female, they'll try to, this is really gruesome. They'll try to castrate each other with those
Oh,
fighting
wow.
teeth. So you have to, so when we shear them, we break off the fighting teeth. We have this tool that like very carefully breaks them down to a smaller, because their teeth grow forever, kind of like beavers, but not really. So you have to actually like snip their teeth or whatever. But there's one female that gets fighting teeth, and that's the alpha. So like we lost our alpha female this year. She was old and died. And so another female became the alpha, and she now has fighting teeth. It's the craziest
That's
thing.
crazy.
They have all these really weird, interesting adaptations. They like drink almost no water, eat almost no food, like because they're originally from the Andes Mountains. So like they consume like a fifth as much as a similarly sized sheep. Um, so that you don't have to like feed them and water them a lot. It's just they're really cool. You know this. You're an
I
alpaca
know.
whisperer.
That is correct. I am the alpaca whisperer. I've only been spit on once.
That's pretty good.
So, yes. Um, Next question. Best
Mhm.
wrestling shoe. I know it's going to come out of your mouth.
That's easy.
The
There's only one right answer. It's the original Adidas Combat Speeds, preferably in black with red accents.
Very nice. And of course your shoe game has been upped just being around me. Outside of wrestling shoes, what's your favorite shoe?
Ooh,
As far as I would say probably in the athletic world of shoes.
that's a toughie. I mean, I'm not gonna go athletic shoe per se. I will say that my daughter for I think it was my birthday or Father's Day last year, got me a pair of Nike Dunks, and they are really comfortable. In fact, I am wearing them right now. I also got a pair of those. Are you familiar with the No Bull brand?
Yes, yes.
Yeah. Those are really nice. I have two No Bulls, and they're really comfortable. Yeah, I would go with either of those, to be perfectly honest. I have a lot of cool shoes. We obviously both have a lot of. We're both shoe people.
Yeah,
Um, and it's kind of funny. My boss at work is a shoe guy too. Although we look like amateurs compared to him.
really.
He could
He's
probably wear a different pair of shoes every day of the year.
wow.
Yeah, yeah. Wow is the right.
Yes.
Yeah.
Um, we'll continue on favorites and best. And Ian's quite a chef. I've been there a few times when he's been making some things.
Oh
But if
yeah.
you could go out anywhere, any restaurant, obviously you're done wrestling, so you don't have to worry about weight. What is going to be your meal? What's that meal that you really want to have?
I tell you what, it's like the favorite food thing is hard for me because I really do like food. I love variety in food. Which is funny because growing up I didn't. I had really simpleton tastes, and then my wife changed me. I am proof that people can be changed by their spouse. But I really have developed a love of trying food. And so I don't have a go-to. It's very mood dependent. Actually, I'm really lucky because my kids were also raised that way. So they've tried a lot of food. So like, you know, if we were in a city, like if I said, let's go have Indian, they're gonna be all for it. If we did seafood, they'll be all for it. If we had sushi, if we went out for pizza or steak, they're all for it. So, um, I don't, that's, I hate to have a no answer to your question, but
Just
uh,
food.
it might, yeah, just different kind of, I like variety. But that's the other funny thing. I could probably eat the same thing every day if I had to, especially if I had like fitness goals. So like, what was it? Gosh, almost 9 years ago now, 9 years ago, I had a sabbatical, which is where, professors get to take a semester off of teaching and do something. So mine involved like a lot of just novel course creation and some research. I ended up presenting at an international conference in Sweden, which was awesome. But I also got in really good shape. And so part of the way I did that is I ate the same thing every day, just so I could perfectly manage my macros and everything. And I did. I got in amazing shape. And that is so in the rearview mirror now. But I did. I just ate the same thing, and it worked. So. I don't need variety. I like variety, but I don't necessitate it. Okay, let's circle back around. If I had to pick two foods right now, it would be sushi and pizza. Those
Perfect
are those are
choices.
probably my two favorite foods. Steaks,
Perfect
as mentioned.
choices.
Yeah,
You've got to travel the world a lot, not a lot,
yeah.
but enough. You've got
We
to
have we
travel.
have traveled. We have traveled a lot of
Yeah.
places.
So
That's
let's
fair.
let's do this in two different ways here. What's been like the coolest place you've gone? The need, just wow, that was a great trip. And then where is the next place? What's the next one on the
Yeah.
list?
Yeah, good questions. And that first question is really hard to answer. I'm going to say that my favorite city is London. London is just a cool city. So much history. British people are fun. They're really kind of clever and interesting. They actually know the whole English language. They explore their vocabulary.
Yeah,
Uh, Everything things are not just awesome and sucks. So it's really cool. It's easy to get around London. Like man, with the London Underground, the tube, you can just zip around that city like nothing. It's so big, but it's so navigable. Love London. Um, Probably, but one of the coolest places I've ever been is probably we've been to Rome a couple of times actually, and I've been in the Sistine Chapel, and that's a very moving place to be in. And the artwork is incredible. Um, those are probably the two that come to mind right now. I'm probably forgetting something. There's probably like a place I'm like, oh, duh, that's the most moving and incredible place I've ever been, but it's just not it's not snapping to the forefront of my brain right now.
maybe it's
Um,
because it's just Storm Lake as you come in and see the lake right there every day that
I
you're
I
already there.
actually I actually do love Storm Lake. I think it's a great town and it's beautiful and the people are super friendly. I love that we settled near Storm Lake. Because I do look forward to driving to work every day because it is so pretty. In fact, sometimes I'll take the eastern route, which is longer than the
Mhm.
western route for us. We live south of town, just because it's a breathtaking sight. So, okay, so to your question of where is next? Next is booked and ready to go. We are actually, as a family, going to Germany this summer.
Oh,
Uh,
awesome. That
which is
is
yeah, we're going in August. I'm really excited about it. One, I've always wanted to go to Germany. Two, I love beer. Three, I love cool architecture and cathedrals. There's a lot of history in Germany, a lot of religious history too, specific to Protestantism and also Catholicism. Munich and Bavaria was kind of like the last Catholic stronghold in Germany and still is today. There's actually a lot of really cool Catholic relics in Bavaria because at the time of Martin Luther, the Pope really wanted to continue to keep some of Germany, and so they sent relics from um, uh, losing my words here from the Vatican just to kind of like continue to strengthen that relationship. So there's just a lot of cool things about Germany. Also, I've been this would be I'm not going to babble about this on this podcast and bore people, but I've been way into genealogy and ancestry lately, and so I've traced a lot of my family's branches back to Europe. And so I'm actually really curious about the German part of my bloodline, and so it'll be cool to go back and see some of those things. We're actually going to have to take another trip sometime to see a lot of the genealogical stuff, but we're going to Cologne, we're going to the Black Forest, we're going to go and bop into Strasbourg, France, which at different times has been German or Prussian, and actually that's where a lot of my wife Lisa's ancestry is from. Then we're going to bop back into the Black Forest. We're going to go down to Zurich, Switzerland, um, just to check out Switzerland, and then we're going to pop back up and go across to Munich into like we're going to Bavaria, so we'll see Munich, Castle Neuschwanstein. We're going to go to Dachau, one of the concentration camps, and then we're going to come home. So yeah, it's going to be awesome. Looking forward to it. I'm actually trying to learn as much German as I can right now. And don't ask me to do it right now because it's too late for me to try to be
to
bilingual. But
well,
that's
well,
been
well, while you're in Germany, and Tatum probably is going to be just as interested in this, because Germany is the birthplace of Smurfs also. Maybe she can um, continue
and
our Smurf collection with an
yeah,
actual German Smurf. That'd be the way to go.
yeah,
And I
let
think
it.
maybe your wife's lineage is where mine is also. I believe is it La Salle Lagrange or something like that.
Oh, Alsace-Lorraine.
Yeah,
Yeah,
there you go. That's on the
Alsace-Lorraine.
border of France and Germany. That's
Yep.
where at least half of my family came from. So
Cool.
yeah,
Yeah,
so
that makes
maybe
sense.
similar.
Greater,
Yeah.
greater.
So
Yep.
we'll go back into a little bit of wrestling realm here, kind
Yep.
of coaching decisions.
Mm.
Second period, you cannot defer because that's already been deferred. What's going to be your choice? And now, as a coach, what do you look at in the decision making?
There's a lot going on there, right? So if I want to totally cop out on this decision, there's two ways to cop out, right? One is to pick bottom, because that's the old school thing to do. I'm probably not going to do that. The other cop out thing, and actually this isn't a cop out thing, it might actually be one of the right things to do, which is to look at your wrestler and say, where do you want to go? How are you going to win this match? Where are you going to score points? Make it their decision. You and I have talked about this a lot about the problem of you as a coach telling an athlete, this is what you're going to do, because if it doesn't work, they're going to come off the mat and blame you, right? And you don't want that. You want it to be their match. So I always like the idea of giving it to them. And if it's a ridiculous decision, then you can protest, right? So like if the first period they got taken down and let up 5 times, and they look over at you and say, "Oh, I want to go neutral." Like, no, that's stupid. Like,
Yes.
duh, take top and see if you can do something there. Or, don't take down because then they're just gonna let you up and take you down again. So, what I really like thinking of the first period if it makes it to the end of the first period. First period is kind of like you're gathering intel, right? You're gathering intelligence on how you're gonna make that choice. And then sometimes you just don't have enough intel, right? So like if it's the um, if you're scoreless the first period, you never get to see referee's position. And so, like if you have a wrestler that's really good on top, if the other person takes down in the second period. That's obviously not your question, but if that wrestler takes down, sweet. Now we get free top position to
Yeah.
see how that goes, right? So, but I think that's generally my answer would be second period. They defer to us. What are we choosing? I think a lot of it's up to the wrestler, but a lot of it also should be you take factor in what happened in the first period. You know, if you're dominating in neutral, go neutral. If you didn't turn them and they ended up escaping, but you can take them down at will, go neutral. There's some danger in taking bottom because you don't know like what
Yeah.
happens if we're just crushing the opponent and then we take bottom and get stuck. That's not good. So, but that's what I would do.
Good answer. I talk a lot about this. We talk about this throughout our year too, pre-match rituals. Can you think back to when you were wrestling and did you have something that was flip that switch that for you?
So I was an overthinker, and I would get myself way too jacked up. And I think as I got deeper into my wrestling career, I was aware of that. And so I went from listening to like a lot of Metallica and Rocky soundtrack stuff to just like chilling, and relaxing. That was more important to me, just to keep my adrenaline under control. So I didn't, because what would happen is I would go out there and I was in really good shape. But I would burn my anxious energy in the first 3 seconds and be tired.
Hmm.
Even though I could go through an entire like 2.5 hour practice and never be tired. So for me personally, it wasn't so much about flipping the switch, but making sure I didn't flip the switch over and over and over again to wear myself down. So that's kind of how it worked with me. And I think, if I had it to do over again, I would take what's kind of a more modern approach, which is like what we do with our team now, where they basically do the equivalent of a match before their first match. So they have like a live-ish type experience when they're warming up, to really kind of get the first match jitters out, and then it's just a matter of going out and wrestling, and getting themselves prepared, to not worry about the match, but just to go out and dictate your tie, your plan, and be ready to change things up as need be.
Typically, this next question I ask about Disney movies, but I'm going to say this just a little bit differently because I know that you have a movie list for the kids that is
Mm,
almost required of your children to watch before they leave the nest.
yeah,
Um, why don't you just tell us some of the things on that list, and then maybe I'll ask you something
sure.
follow up from there.
Yeah, I mean it's pretty heavily 80s movie oriented. Like they've seen well, not 80s and 90s. I mean, they've seen a lot of classic stuff like all the Star Wars movies and Raiders of the Lost Ark, Indiana Jones, and like Ferris Bueller's Day Off. Real Genius is a hilarious movie. Val Kilmer, who died recently, was in that. Let's see. Good Will Hunting is one that I've had them watch. Oh my goodness. I don't know. I should also just pull up the list and look at it. But it's kind of a moving list too, because we watch a lot of stuff that just pops up like, okay, add it to the list, add it to the list. And the list is huge. And they've watched a lot of like really, really classic stuff. Like I don't know if Noah would agree with me now, but at one point, It's a Wonderful Life was one of his favorite movies. So it's a modern, now 19-year-old kid that likes an old black and white movie because it's an amazing movie. Like it's very well made. The characters are compelling. The story's compelling. It's a lot about humanity and life and what would have happened had we not been a part of it, and the ripple effect that we have on people around us, and
Yeah.
how important that is. So, um, yeah, yeah. I don't know. I think I always wanted my kids to be readers because I think it's really important to read and to learn to analyze things without watching a screen, because then you can kind of do it in your own time, with your own sort of like ability to process emotion and whatnot. Um, But man, movies are great for thinking and for challenging and also for comedy. Like one of the things I like about my kids is we quote movies all the time. Like Ian quoted 16 Candles the other day. You know, the
Uh,
scene where Long Duck Dong drives the guy's car into a lake. So it's just like and so to that end, I feel like my kids were like simultaneously raised in the decades they were, but also in the 70s, 80s, 90s, and to some degrees even the 50s and 60s. Like they had some experiences that my parents had, like we had them in 4-H and things like that. So um, that's and the whole movie thing's part of that, just giving them different perspectives and different ways of looking at life. So,
so, like I said, typically I ask Disney movie, and this is my next follow-up question, which Aaron was the first one to get this question. So I now have a comparison.
oh no,
What
I'm
Disney character, if you need to wrestle a
Mhm.
Disney character, what Disney character are you going to wrestle?
For a challenge or because I want to win.
See, I need to I need to clarify that because that's where she went with that also. Let's
Yeah.
say, I mean,
I
let's
mean,
go
if I
one of
want to
each then.
win, if I can get a hold of Tinkerbell, she's really small, right? I'm pretty sure I could squash Tinkerbell. Maybe not. She might be really tough. I don't remember Peter Pan that well. Maybe she was like deadly. I don't remember. So
How about for the challenge?
for the challenge, oh boy. This is a really hard question for me now. If you would have asked me this when my kids are younger, I probably could have just ripped something off. Now I'm trying to think of, Disney movies. Um, oh boy. This could be a really awkward long pause here, Troy. I don't know. Help me out. Like, give me some examples. Maybe this will stir something.
Well, I mean, would like a Mufasa Scar battle be in there? You know, there's a Disney
Oh,
character,
wait.
or you
So
know,
wait, hold
Gaston
on.
is a really big dude. You know,
Okay, am I wrestling them or am I arranging a match
no,
between them?
you are wrestling them. You're
Oh,
wrestling them, but I mean, you know, either
well,
Scar or Mufasa
okay.
would be a tough battle.
It would
Gaston was
definitely
a big dude.
I would definitely want to wrestle a human. Like the idea of wrestling a lion sounds like a really bad idea.
You're probably
So
right.
I would at least shrink it down to that. So I wouldn't wrestle Beast. I wouldn't wrestle Mufasa or Scar. Um, oh my goodness. Wow, this is just not where my brain is at all right now. Troy. I'm really sorry. This is disappointing.
It's and
Uh,
that's okay.
boy, I'm not gonna wrestle Bambi. Let's see. Well, Disney could be anything now, right?
It could
Because
be,
they own
yeah.
Star Wars, they
It could
own
go. They
Marvel.
own a lot. Pixar.
Man, man, they do own Pixar. I'm not gonna wrestle Wally. Uh, man, goodness. Yeah, I'm at a loss.
All right, that's okay.
All right, that's really
That
disappointing.
that is all right. Um, we'll go back into the wrestling world a little bit here. Someone in wrestling that inspired either has inspired you or you are inspired by.
Hmm,
This could be like senior level person. This could be anybody, really, honestly.
gosh. Inspires a weird word for me. I mean, I don't know how to explain that, but like there are people that I am really interested in how they wrestle and how they look outwardly at life and how they affect other people. Um I mean, I'm definitely a big Amit Elor fan,
Hmm.
because of what she's done on the mat, and also, I mean, she's a really good role model. She honestly seems like a good person. She posts a lot of really positive content on Instagram that I think is really, if young female wrestlers, or even young male wrestlers look at how she conducts herself, I think that's really powerful to see somebody who's just a solid human, or at least appears that way. We don't know
Yeah.
anymore. Right? So definitely her. When I was growing up, Uh, John Smith, I think is somebody I looked up to, like his style of wrestling, his tenacity, the way he changed levels, was just and chain wrestled was so cool. I think a lot of people think about him and his low single, but honestly, the way he would chain into like a fireman's or a high C, was really impressive. Just the way he would hit angles. Um, you know, I don't know. There's a lot of wrestlers I like to follow now. I love following a lot of the Japanese wrestlers. They're doing some really neat things technique wise, and they seem like pretty cool guys too. There's a lot of one thing I really like about a lot of modern wrestlers is they seem like they're, at least outwardly, they seem like they're more willing to share. Um, what they're doing. Like, when I wrestled, I felt like it was hard to like want to be friends with your opponents and stuff like
Yeah.
that. And it seems less that way now. Like there seems to be a lot more goodwill and desire to learn and to train with different people and learn from different styles. And I respect that. I think that's really cool. Being in the Hawkeye state, I don't know how this is gonna float, but I do like what Cale Sanderson does. I like the way that he outwardly is kind of quiet and seems very focused on creating a good competitive environment for his wrestlers, managing competitive stress and trying to focus on the right things. So I appreciate that. I don't know. I appreciate the passion and vision of Troy Greeter, and what he's done for our sport. That's absolutely true. I look up to you for a lot of things that you've done. So I would be remiss in not including you in that list. To make this less awkward, I need to pick one more. Uh,
No, it's appreciated. I don't know if it's true or not, but it's
oh, it is
appreciated.
it is 100% true. But let's see. I mean, like I think growing up, I really I don't know that I idolized the Branzes, but their tenacity was
Hmm.
something I appreciated. I mean, just the idea that you can that there are perceived limits to how hard you can train, but there's always you can a lot of times you can go further than you dreamed, and so um, just that's something I talk about a lot with our current athletes. It's like you're not going to grow until you become uncomfortable, until you push yourself past your limits and ask what if I did this? What if I did this thing I'm uncomfortable doing? What if I really try to become good at it? Maybe I'll become good at it, maybe I won't, but maybe it'll open up other things. So just any wrestlers um, that can show that they can overcome their limitations or reach a new level. I think maybe, and we talked about this. I think at one of the recent graduation parties, the match between recent match between Skylar Grote and Amit Elor.
Yeah.
I don't know that anybody would have predicted that would have been as close as it was, and Skylar Grote's had an incredible journey as a wrestler, and to see her come to the point where she almost beats somebody that's been absolutely dominant against international competition is incredible. So I would say her efforts inspire me on some level, that she's been able to overcome a lot of things and then come to the point of almost upsetting one of the most dominant senior level wrestlers in recent history.
And it's crazy that we say one of the most dominant level wrestlers in recent history, and she's like, what, 20?
Yeah. Yeah.
Isn't that crazy?
Oh my God, these young kids, like
Oh,
your
they're
Bubba
amazing.
Bassett and PJ Dukes. I mean, it is wild what they're doing, and
Yeah.
just yeah, yeah, it is a wild time to be involved in wrestling.
I'm going to go back to your coaches that you had growing up, both
Yeah.
high school, college. Is there something that you always, you'll be in situations and you'll hear something one of your coaches have said to you? Is there something that always will ring in the back of your mind?
Probably, but that's a hard question for me to answer devoid of a situation. Like, I'll be in a
Yeah.
situation and I'll think of that. Um, but I don't know if I can come up with one right now.
Okay. No, that's fine. I
Yeah.
just I know you've had have a lot of, that's all right.
As you well
Now
know,
here,
like when we'll be coaching, like we'll be sitting in the corner or even talking at a tournament, I'll often tell a story about, my coach did this or said this or would preach this. Or I'll tell you a funny story about, something
yeah,
that they did or funny practical joke. But it's almost always situational.
yeah.
It's all like this reminds me of something. And so I don't know if I can come up with anything specific off the cuff like that.
Well, this one I'm not going to let you off the hook because this actually the next couple are pretty important.
Mhm.
If you could have any superpower, like either got bit by some spider that was radioactive, went through some gamma rays, whatever. If you can have any superpower, what is that superpower going to be?
Uh, that's a really hard question for me because I think it's oh man. So a lot of times a superpower enables you to do something that you can't already do, or it compensates for something you don't have, and I don't I don't desire any superpower, I don't think. I mean, so like if I was gonna be super selfish, well, I shouldn't say super selfish. I would love to have a young body again. And that's not a superpower. I guess regeneration would be a superpower.
There you
Um,
go.
but and we've talked about this a little bit. We've both gotten to the point where it's really hard for us to live wrestle, and even technique is getting harder to show. I spent this last year, I spent way more time coaching with my voice than because I used to everything was pressure and feel, and I spent a lot more time this year just slowing it down and trying to get athletes to do these things, in partners or whatever, which actually I think made me a better coach. But I would love to have like I would love to be able to live wrestle without any kind of like fear of repercussion anymore. I know that's not really again, regeneration, I guess, is a super
Yeah.
but yeah,
Oh,
just the idea of having a young body again is really appealing because I love to live wrestle. Like we've talked about this. I would love to go in a room and wrestle for 5 hours. Like that
yeah.
sounds awesome. I miss that. And I can't anymore. I mean, there's just like things don't work as well. I don't have a lot of space between my vertebrae anymore. I know what happens if I have to have surgery to repair that, and there's some potential complications. It's like, it's just not worth it.
Yeah.
So yeah, the superpower of regeneration,
It's
super
that
awesome.
that would be a wonderful one because
And,
myself, I cannot do any wrestling hardly anymore either. It's
uh,
challenging.
I hope that if I were to gain the power of regeneration, that I would be more of a Wolverine regenerative superhero than a Deadpool superhero, because a Deadpool superhero should not be allowed to coach children.
That's there you go. Good point. Very good point. Um, before we these two questions will kind of work together. And we don't have enough information on this yet, but what do you think about some of the uh, experiments I think that other states are doing? We'll say New York, and then I've seen some things where North Carolina is actually thinking about sanctioning in modified folk style, and then New
Yeah.
York sanctioned in freestyle. What do you think
Mhm.
about some of the challenge? I mean, are you what do you think about those opportunities or thoughts?
Yeah. Yeah. Is this controversial? I don't know. I'm actually vehemently opposed to freestyle in high school, and as part of the school season. And I know that people are going to think I'm a moron or something. But honestly, like it just doesn't make sense. And unless you somehow were to convince the boys' side to also do it just because of availability of officials. I mean, it's really important. It's really important to give everybody the opportunity to have a good experience. And part of that relies on um, allowing officials to officiate effectively, right? They want to do a good job. We want them to do a good job. And I think if you try to do girls with freestyle, boys with folk style, it's just that's too hard. There's not enough officials to do that. There's not enough officials that are freestyle trained. I love freestyle. I think it's awesome. But let's do it in the seasons where it works. So I'm not a big fan of freestyle during the school year in high school. During the regular freestyle season, absolutely.
Yeah.
I'm all for it. But and also, wrestling is wrestling. Like honestly, I would love to see girls have the opportunity to do freestyle, folk style, and Greco throughout
Yeah.
the year. I would love to see Greco become big in girls wrestling, and I think it could be. I don't think it's that far off. I think it's going to
I
happen.
think that could be a real big thing. I think girls are built for Greco,
Yeah,
quite
yeah.
honestly.
I think girls Greco would be super exciting.
Yeah.
Maybe more exciting than freestyle even. But yeah. Uh, so I more wrestling style is good. Like I would. We've talked about this too. I would love to see any athlete that has the opportunity to experience because of where they're living judo or jujitsu do that too. More wrestling is better. Folk style gives ultimately does give I mean I get that to some degree we're a little behind the curve then when our athletes try to hit international waters, but they also have techniques that aren't typically used internationally. Like we've seen US athletes pin international athletes with arm bars and cradles, and they're like, whoa,
Yeah.
what is this, right? So,
Yep.
um, that's good. And it also translates well to other martial arts. If you wanted to pursue an MMA career, folk style wrestling is a perfect transition for that. We've seen that, many instances of that. But back to your question about, high school and what should be done. You mentioned modified folk. I'm a really big fan of modified folk because it simplifies a lot of the out of bounds and stalling stuff, right? So if you have to, instead of deciding, well, they went out of bounds, and it seemed like there was either no attempt to circle in or someone was trying to prevent someone from circling in. So I got to call stalling on somebody, but I'm not going to because I don't know who it is, but I'm supposed to. It's kind of a mess. Like it's better now at the high school level because they've adopted what were previously the college rules.
Yeah.
So at least determining whether or not you're in bounds is doable now. Whereas before
It
you had to
was
have
nuts.
a committee of 7 people and two of them had to have advanced degrees. Um, but so at least we've simplified that. But I think really you could even simplify it further. A step out as a point. Um, that's not as hard to call, and it encourages action. So if that's the simpler route to what you do in out of bounds, let's do that. And it's exciting. I mean, there's some really good strategy there. You have to like. Did you see the Spencer Lee? Is it Ray Higuchi?
Mm,
Um,
I think yes.
yeah, that match. Like I wasn't a huge fan of that match, but it was really sort of interesting to see how Spencer Lee's opponent was able to cut him off and really like control the mat more. That was interesting to me. I don't know if it was interesting to other people, but it was still good wrestling. It was really interesting to see how a wrestler like Spencer Lee, who's usually very dominant in that aspect, was kind of on his heels a lot of the match. That was interesting to watch. It's definitely worth a watch back for anybody to see how he was able to do that, how he was able to move Spencer and create that pressure. So yeah, I would be all in favor of both boys and girls wrestling adopting modified folk, and that just becomes new folk style wrestling. I would be
Yeah.
all for that. I think that would be a good transition to freestyle. I think it'd be easier to officiate. I don't know. I would probably want to talk to my official friends first to see what and I think I have talked to them a little bit about that, and some of them are would find that appealing, and some wouldn't. But yeah, honestly, if we were going to make a change, if we were going to go that direction, I'd go modified folk first and adopt the step out point, but only the step out point. I know that we've been in some other tournaments where we do like neutral restarts. I wouldn't do that. I really like referees position wrestling. I don't like the idea that you can just like be like, oh, now you get up. I mean, that seems to work in
Yeah.
freestyle, but I think I would take some convincing to adopt that also in folk style on a more
To give
permanent.
up to give up that choice to be on top.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
So you've kind of probably answered my next question, and it's always my last question before the final thoughts. You got a new job. You're the head of the NFHS Rules Committee for Wrestling.
Oh boy.
What rule would you change or make?
It might be the introduction of a step out point. Let me think if there's any. Are there other ones I've complained about or?
Well, it depends on the referee.
Well, that's an application of the rule as opposed to the rule itself. We'll go a step out point. Yeah.
I think that is probably overwhelmingly what people have said because it's become my last question and stuff, and I think most people have said step out. I really
Yeah.
like that.
Yeah, I think that would be again, good for action, good for keeping action in the center of the mat. Also then that with a step out point, the who is actually pushing versus not becomes a little more obvious too. I don't know if that would make stalling easier to call too, but I think it would just be easier to call in general. Um, and it would be comical, right?
Yeah.
And by what I mean by that is you and I think maybe we had the same experience at understanding what a step out as opposed to a push out was the first time. Do you remember
Yes.
when Abby McIntyre as a high
Yeah.
schooler, Midwest Mat of Dreams, and she picked up a girl in a double leg and just like walked off the mat with her and then gave up a step out point because she's the one that
Yeah.
stepped and we both
Yeah.
flipped. That can't be right. And no, that's how you call it.
That's
So
yeah.
yeah.
Yes. Continued action would have been a better maybe
Yeah.
call, but
Yeah.
and maybe that was the proper application would have been a continued action. I don't know, maybe, but
Oh,
I'm not an
boy.
official.
Oh, but then that muddies the rules even more because then you forego the modified folks step out point and say, well, but in the case of a continued action, and that becomes
You're right. I
ambiguous. And
just made it harder, didn't I?
yep, you made it more like freestyle.
You're
So,
right. You're right. So I have gone through my entire list. I may have missed a point or two in there, but I think I've covered everything I wanted to. I always give an opportunity for final thoughts. Any final thoughts on this evening?
thanks for the opportunity. I've been hoping at some point you'd have me on this podcast. Not because I think I have a lot to say, but I thought it'd be fun. And it seems normal. We've had a pretty cool journey together these years, and I'm excited because I don't really see an obvious end in sight, and I don't really want it to end. So I love the opportunity to coach. I've enjoyed coaching with you, and I hope as long as as long as we're both competent coaches, we get to continue doing what we love, and I hope we continue to be good at it. So there you go.
All right, very good. I'm actually going to hit the stop button because, we talked about not hitting the stop button, but I'm going to.
Are you
So
really going to hit the stop button?
I'm going
Is
to.
this?
You'll hear it.
Are you going to hit the stop button and then ask me what I think of the political situation in the United States?
I may do that.
Please don't.